Comme ça. Tari zindu tukpe tsari lopsen nangla ya nganzo ge joshi di mashu kongla ya dange tiwachi gobi ina. Namba tso da tanda di ngay lakwa la yuebe ge da gamchung chi yue, ki gamchung chi. Da di karire ngobu chi la ngoyon zingirwa. Ngobu chi, da ngobu sedu zambali ya ngobu senay mido, ngoy zay senay mido. ngobu di deshi yaga chimbe ina kande chila, da nga zo chik susu ki kuyu nang sebi ina rik dami na zo shi tong digire, raba chik mangpo chik nga zo megi ngoy su tong dewa yungure, yang ka chik long soro chimbe ina, yang nga zo megi tong ya meba chik yungure. So today indo nga zo ki ta kanda zambalin di na la ya, taga na shin jik den kham yodo cho na chasang zi sebi ina ngobo mangpo chik tong digire, rik meda mangpo chik, ta chik nga zo susu kim na la sebi ina ya ngobo rik mangpo chik tong digire, tang ngoy she digire, ta di ya ngay tanda dele ya matter se di define context chega, deshe context chega ngobo se dirwa. Ta di deshe ge dele ya idang bo te bezu chunju shi yinbe ina kola ya chagen kar chang gu gure, kola ya keju kar chang gu gure se na, tangi de dok shabe ina 그 슈가브드가 사실 디지털 샵이나 그게 사실 징기여버디 세브레와 근데 슈디나 세비나 다들도와 사실 디 저기 rectangular 사실 디 투지나모 입디 근데시 그 사실 진도와 사실 근데시 진도와 디직체 다가나 신기 콜리아 드즈지야 용구르와 송에데 슈에디 matter 세딜이야 컨디션을 원지구르나 that occupy space 사자 짐바체 다가난 신게 has rest mass. So 이게 대 mass라는 뜻이와 space the mass. So matter is anything that occupies space and have rest mass. So there deux 여버시다 사자 thinking 식래야 간주기 다 뭐제 세네메 동어고 딘데실이야 뭔지 그래서 다 다른 건도 딜 식파 뭐보게 고등대 시행사비나 레랍스타레 디니 간이야 sometimes 디니 맹겐실이야 당한 중고불네 뭔지 돼 용말에 so matter 세도 차게 디니 상고그래 and something that our senses matter are something that can be received by our senses. right? 딘데식 다 롱도 침베나 nganzo space occupy chigrebes does it occupy any space such zingrebelana of course such zingirwa machine does it have a rest mass yes of course it does have a rest mass so doksheshne nganzo matter is anything that occupies space and has rest mass that thing is called matter and something which is being received by our senses. After that we're going to go a bit further about matter. This matter gonna yakis shabina. Tangem moze digeti pachik yawaji shabina. You do seshine. I would say we've got pure substance and we also have impure substances. 상마인배 ngo보다 부다 즉 상마스나운도 부자인배 ngo보 부자인배 ngo보다 부자마인배 ngo보다 부자인배 ngo보스도 간대질서 해 매버 지금 ngo보실들이와 고배 당마인바도 질 해 매버 ngo보실이야 해 여버 ngo보실이야 아주 impure substance sugar와 부자마인배 ngo보셔시네 so matter can be classified as an impure pure substance and an impure substance basic check now further if I ask you what comes under impure substances, I would say make sure are impure substances. Make sure sedu deze yana tema 즉 대대요 버도치라 원지그와 air is a mixture of gases 봐 대대요 봐 gas rectum and oxygen nitrogen carbon dioxide 되게 다직 망부직 hydrogen 라 쏘거든요 망부직 get 대대요 so air is a mixture of gas so likewise we can experience so many different examples of mixture in our day-to-day life right there are lots of things which are mixed together so soil you may say it's a kind of a mixture it's again a kind of a mixture because there is a water is also mixed, especially seawater or mixture. So mixture, impure substances are mixture. Something which is not pure, right? And then mixture. 아주 예버체비나 당연히 예버체다데 독세비나 다 오케이 딕샤 예 예버체 샤로 당보 mixture the 예버체디 I would say homogeneous and heterogeneous homogeneous mixture and heterogeneous mixture these are two kinds of mixture so 다른 안쪽이 주시 디가나 코디 mixture 간이다. So we're going to talk about mixture. What is a mixture? What are the types of mixture? And then the most relevant topic for today is how do we separate those mixture? 즉 대대요 왜냐 거제 디게 대대요 베이나 다직 연제 컨텐츠가 그러봐 so we're going to talk about mixture meaning we shall also talk about the types of mixture then the components of mixture 데제치기 둡차 가리메 Then, of course, the most important part, separation of mixture. So, mixture we're not going to talk about pure substances. If you're interested, you can explore more on pure substances. Pure substance and pure substance compounds and further you can classify them also element compound so kanda tharing anju topic the pure substance kala me tharing anju topic the it's all about impure substances mixture are the impure substances right so tharing de ngege chik activity chik thoni da mixture sena penha de ya chranso cv na chod di tholi ya chranso kharthongure sebina I've got two different substances, white color one substances. These are the two different substances. Now what I'm going to do is put them together in this glass. And then I'm going to shake it. I'm going to mix them together and let's see what do I get. Now look at this glass. What do you see? 그냥 가르통구도 도나 가르총구도 쉘 디나라야 퍼버 디나리야 그냥 속에 단당 뭐제 까부디안도와 뭐제 낙부디안도와 you can clearly distinguish them. 디나는 아주 이제 미기 아주 이제 셰토구도와 so 대대요 봐. 대대신 아주 믹셔 슈그로 봐. so 디 디나라 뭐제 니디 대대요 뭐제 니디 can I separate them? Yes, of course, I can do it physically. I can do it physically. I can separate them. So, make sure they get by any physical means. So, make sure they get make sure a combination of two or more substances. It's not just a combination of two or more substances, but more importantly, the substances are mixed together in any ratio. right? ratio condition yung sivre pena chig tanda deleya kabu da nakpo digidi kabu chu nakpo dendet nishulene mixine that is again called a mixture kabu chu sabla ya ngege sumjule nakpo nga lembe ina ya di sumju thang di sumju je di nga lembe ina mix cheve ina yam to devi ina that is again called a mixture. So mixture hasn't got any particular ratio, any specific ratio mixes keyo mar kina khande chite na digre chu glass chig nan la chatma chig look chene an kina tuk tam be na that would be called a mixture dilaya mixture lagre chig chabla chat kembu chig chabla ya kina ge kembu ni look be na sum look be na that would again be called a mixture. So mixture say dilaya substance ni mix cheve kapsu that could be in any ratio. So this hakobachi so mixture ki kodön diche it's a combination of two or more substances combined together in any ratio. Mixture say and the flowchart dinal sibe ina mixture the pure reve impure substance reve sena sebu shuburo mixture is an impure substance, it's not a pure substance, right? Mixture the impure substance re impure substance khande chire ilana ani a ta b ni te tom chene ngajo a b sebre delia substance ni de der date substance ni de der kabu da nakpo ni de ne shell di nang la ya kabu da nagu ni jara der. We've got these two together in this glass. So imbe ine dele ya kechushu kharsinang kabu da nagu ni digla ya mix cheve kapsu substance ni mix cheve kapsu it could be in any ratio, it could be done in any ratio khanda shigla ya combine chithwe yore kabu nga ta nagu chulen chene an dele ya kharcha dugre kabu nakpo di dema di chonga chagruwa. So that would be mixture. Tagana shin dele ya nishulne dele ya chulembe ina we get these 30 black and white dices. So that is again a mixture. Mixture doesn't have any particular ratio, fixed ratio yo mare. That is an important thing to know. Now next taring anjoge ta mixture le du sambala yente cheya kolida. How are we going to separate the mixture components of mixture? There we've got two different components, a black and a white component, right? These are the two different components of a mixture. So black and white component ni dinge mixture dige di yeba khandes chega, that is our main topic. Piche ta di chinganjo ge remodil te chene mixture sena khande chi me to shik gotso yure ta tene nganjo ge di inda. How are we going to separate the mixture? Ta de ya dirwa nganjo ge pesun lenda ya pena ta thade chali ya to I nen di biking ge nga chang de thöden gan ya donan shu chu shi chi che de go re lam de ya yang se nan de go re an di na ne ge che shue chik nga za na ta de ngu go che ya yang se cha di si go chik di she de go ta cha kyan so su cha di si bi na dili ya gyum se ga chen de se bi na kyan so peje da ran la do kha ba nga zo gi la be kan ya 제가 나서 수행에게 보신 도신 다 가리나 microorganism 시그루아디 찾아리야. So could be a bacteria or a virus. So we wash our hands just to get rid of these harmful microbes, these disease causing microbes. 단대차랑아 저 바이러스 또 이네 내부디오비나 디 차시비나 키랑기 라케디 투비나 아니 디맛 추다 이즈냠도 맛 해도고 봐. So in a way 다른기 주시 디다 잡아침부 차고 디 So Kiranso Namgyu Chasi because what you are doing is you are separating. Separation of mixture. We're separating. Also like the day there the thala tan chik kharsa nebus rig stab and the thing also like day there. There's a lot of mixture over here. So what we're doing is we're separating those things. So 차시야 디야 배준시래 다디 separation of mixture. right? 다 될이야 간주 당초되라 why do we need to separate them? 다디 간주 가서 그래 it's a very common sense. right? 간주 차시야 디 내부 디게 간주 거에 매와 수불이야 디게 간주 나스 수익으로 봐. It harms us. It harms us. So we need to get rid of them. These viruses, these bacteria, they are unwanted thing for our body. Ngazu supul ya duzu goya mendo wa naza sugiru wa kangin tagiru wa. So ngazu mixture the separate chi godun di why cheche towards levina, that's a very common sense question. So what we're doing is we're separating. We need to separate a mixture because we need to get rid of those harmful substances, those toxin substances. Chik khasera ngazo supulaya toxin sedu sambalaya ta thuk dushi lagirwa thuk sedu ngazo supulaya subugi chik khasik lem mathunge gi zerik sang chazang shilaya ngazo thuk sigirwa ngazo supule 뇌삽 gi chala khari yobena delaya thuk sigirwa injimi지 독통 독세나 ngazo 직하나 침배에 있는 ngazo 시고야 되는데 켜기도 말아 근데 supule 뇌 가리키기 여부 디기 chala delaya 양 ngazo기 다 독세랑 toxin 세야 돼. So ngazo 직 망부직 make sure to get separate chigo야지. Some of them are harmful, some of them are non-harmful. So we are categorizing them. ngazo yen제 chi고 독세치네. 배나 총각와나 침배 인배이나 양 ngazo 직 chala 릭다 근데 샴되기도 와. 안 될이야 직 가서 녀제 다 배나 ngazo게 카스그레 수면도 침배이네레 이즈도 침배이네레 다가난 신기야 즉 세제릭스 된데 벤 되게 상황냠도 데치는 샤구면도 와 총가되게 나리야 트럼백업소 딕백업소 상마 데치는 샤구면도 와 강에 데베이나 즉 렌다 세 강에 여러봐 디 상마 연체치는 샤구도 와 디기도 와안 디게 된 아주 답되고 싶도 와 소소라 고콜로 빠베기 렌 쇼쇼로 싶도 와 소디 아주 믹셔 세퍼레이트 체디아 즉 소소 고고 왕기 최고래 다가난 신기 즉 삽 마여바다 여바찰라니 디 ngobu ngoze니 디야 연체치야 so separation of mixture is harmful. We need to get rid of them, number one, and then so we need to make use of them. That is again a part of separation of mixture. Separation of mixture is done to identify the property of a substance. 뭐세 디기 캐주디 소소게 학과에 차투야 아니 가서 연제치고 레스 독체다 연제치에 그 금세망 보이고 그래. 와 디치 삼바체 why do we need to separate a mixture? 다 연제치고에 디 캐치 뭐이 버체. Now how do we separate a mixture? 아주 컨텐츠네 mixture the separate 치가스 다 될이야 답되고 주비나 디강 제셰비나 다른 될이야 독시지 연제 제단 디강이다. Normally what we say is we separate a mixture depending upon the type of a mixture. Mixture ki rik khande chiresha. What is the type of a mixture? First, we have to understand that. Then on the basis of that thing, we're going to exercise different methods. ngajui chik mixture ki rik khande chim ba hagol pena ngaju tang ngagi genchre ngi loktu le yama lokti cheb kapsu tang loktu dige ki che khasegre lyugu choba semkham di nge shen gugre loktu changma chikba marwa so dinte khop thone ani pugu chedaba di loktu de le ya nge ki khande che chik lobjon te gugudu yiglab gugudu dinge got rathoygruwa changmali ya chik nangshi kyagu marwa so di nangshi ngaju ki tangbo de la mixture separate chiga trodu sambala mixture ki ngo di shen gugre what is the type of a mixture that we are dealing with? Then after knowing that thing, then we can exercise different methods as per the nature of mixture. So mixture separation of mixture is done on the basis of type of mixture. Mixture ki rik khande chirisha. Right? So mixture ki rik ha makho bale ya ngamsu separate chiga method pechu chiga dugi ilana di khaku cha swa. So on the basis of type of mixture dokche. Method kari yor. Tang azu type of mixture di tangbo CV na. We've got solid liquid mixture. Azu solid chik da liquid ni de yo yung sibre. Tagana shin ki we have got liquid mixture. Taring azu so ni digang ke shiginda. Ti main begiya mixture rig tamin azu yung sibre solid the gas yung sibre wa. Then liquid the gas yung sibre. Then de ki ta liquid type of mixture could be in any form, but majorly we are going to discuss these two for today. Taring zira thukbe chetuya mixture gi rig ni digang ngaju ke shegi solid the liquid mix che de yuna and how do we separate them ngaju khandis yenje chega solid the liquid ni mix che yuna ni bedele ya liquid the liquid ni rwa ni mix che yuna then how do we separate them shezu ni de rwa ta pena ngaju gi dele ya 배순진 다 solid the liquid 기 mixture 도 직 those shit dang it I'm going to take your sand particles. I'm going to take sand particles. These are the sand particles, and I'm going to pour some water in it. I'm going to mix these two. This is liquid, that's a solid. This is a solid thing, and this is liquid. I'm going to mix them together and make a mixture out of it. So let me thoroughly mix it. I'm going to stir it properly. Right. Okay, fine. So I'm going to leave it aside for a few minutes. Let's see. Now the things are mixed, and let's see what happens after a few minutes. Now this is a solid and liquid mixture. Now, on the other hand, let me take. So I think I should remove this covering so that you can see it properly. So this is a liquid. So I'm going to take the second example of liquid and liquid mixture. This is water. I've got water in it, and I'm going to take, this thing is petrol. So I'm going to mix them together, water and petrol, right? These two are liquids. So this is a mixture of between two liquids, mixture of two liquids, petrol and water, and this is your mixture of liquid and a solid, right? Solid is solid are the sand particles, and liquid is water. Now the question is, how do we use different separational methods if the type of mixture is solid and liquid, right? So I've got few of these methods for you. Number one, I've got sedimentation. Kindly remember these terms, sedimentation. I've got decantation. Then I've got filtration. I could even use sieving methods. Then finally, evaporation also. So these are the few methods that we can use in terms of separating solid and a liquid. Right, so we'll go one by one, starting with sedimentation. Now look at this, the mixture of solid and a liquid. Now, can you see the sand particles at the bottom of this container? Liquids, you can clearly see the water above the solid particles. The solid particles have deposited at the bottom of this container. So that's what we call sedimentation. So actually, why do you think the solid particles have settled down? Obviously because they're heavier, right? So in case of sedimentation, what we are doing is we are separating a solid which is heavier, or you may say heavier particle. Solid, this sand particle is a heavier particle. So a heavier solid particle in a fluid. So it's like sedimentation is the settlement. Papa, the chematige the chinganzu kasire jigo chayo sa ani chik fluid nangla tebi nama pabdugutwa shabdelama delia degitwa the kumsen de ko jigo chayo sarwa. So sedimentation lana tendechile sugar ta dinga sedimentation di namsha gyunding meznalia nanglia de dan chikkan chikya sejerix tige de Truguna, and the Chusha Tampacus to take Chico chairs, some Chual Digdwa, and the gun let you get it, so to get the gun left in there, and delay a sedimentation like Rua. So, sedimentation, Dinala, what we're doing is it's a separation of heavier solid particles that settle at the bottom this layer. But inchi menchi ngansuki tindich sediment shuku mar penangegi indich lemina. Also long de sidarwa. Tanda kangmi dinaliya long yorwa. A tangna shingi long nalaya kyam devegi tanda dege tanda de talagi tajik dusin chunchu de yungurwa. There are so many infinite dust particles in this room floating freely in the air. We call it a suspension, right? Tadelia kyamder da panankiliya. Then azumigi ngoste tongumundwa gyumsen de dige de chungda chönerwa. Tadelia Pena, for example, suppose your mom is dusting the room, amla ki nang sangma sugyo bache and kap to do somebody ya nang kadu sangma sobe ina thala mangbuchi lan digidwa. Sangma sobe ring ya thala shuji long na ya ani peje amla gi kiran sungdo khabredwa nang la thala shulang do kiran ma chi la tyongyu sejne. So the nang la ya thala shuji lambre long na ya thala shuji kyamde re. So the day ki jingya khashele ya the day allergy the yobe ina kange chegwa. So kanda Today you pick up so that consumption 장마 쇠 차버줄라야 아니 같이 두세나 dust particles 되게디 they settle down 마 public이도 와 안쪽세가 안도 와인 베네레 잘라 가와인 베네 마 밥체 사딩가나 마 public이도 와 that is again sedimentation 다 델이야 가리우스나 추스 케페주다면 말다 믹셔디 가레 air is a gas dust particles are solid the gas ki mixture Sedimentation nangla sedimentation the injimenchi solid to the liquid chigla ya kogoe yomare sedimentation the injimenchi tela ya kogoe tsam yomare solid the liquid nangla sedimentation yungres lane kyamete yomare sedimentation can even be used in case of solid and gas mixture tadange present na shire ro kyangi kim 장마 소비 값수 탈라 롱나라 탈라 대신 그러와 간삼줄라 탈라디 캬ම්디 말와 간삼줄라 탈라디 마 밥리기도 와 장마 소비 사비줄라 클리클리 체치네 그러와 디디야 sedimentation 기 ngochire 어디 쉐이 독체 다 sedimentation is a separation of heavier solid particles that settle at the bottom of the fluid medium chigi nangi wal 당에 when I say fluid 아주 책디야 fluid say do something that flows freely right so fluid say do what flows is gas flows. No, you do right? Tanashi liquid flows. Chuya shalagal per in a chudu. So we call these two as fluid. So fluid medium chignala solid heavier solid particles to get ma pop chimba. Didichlea sedimentation. Now this is a sedimentation. The wadelia solid chilhaswa. We call this as sediments. Sediments like sediments. And so also Julia Chizo Sandy jump pickup so mix it the geography jump pickups any rocks dolly rectamina yungruwa and one of them is called sedimentary rock the jegi that sediments na ma papchen zakto gyapchen kanza pressure shukchimbu shuji no shu wale yani tsirchene ni di sadigi the tapo charge kanda tamadel dolly gutro or the naturally sedimentary rocks igruwa ta kanda di jul jaje kanda sediments sedu is something that settles at the bottom something that is heavy and which settles at the bottom that is called sediment so tela ya tagaran chigo nga yenje shedi so ya that was temporary momentarily they got mixed up but afterwards when we allow them to settle the sand particles being heavier particle they settle at the bottom right so we have separated the two the upper part is the liquid part the lower part is the solid part so what the sedimentation sa part decantation rida decantation na ta dirwa nga joge pena look here decantation the initial chair the niga na ya tan de ya the gangi third petrol rwa because it's lighter than water. Water being heavier, it is at the bottom, right? So 내 같이 걸세나 저기 다디마 예버체 투그룹 베스나 제 투그룹아. So 델이야 탑lâm 간데치 표시당 가나 we are going to use decantation method. 델이야 decantation. 간데치가 알나. Now 계승에 된 방바실내치네. 나오게 칼리 델이야 lighter the heavier particle 니 카테 사브다. Third the lighter particle che what the heavier particle. So now we are going to slowly tilt it and we are going to take petrol out of it, out of the mixture. That's what now I'm doing decantation. Then ye decantation chigorda. Lighter particle, the heavier particle need the separate chigor. I'm doing decantation. So like this. Now I've got petrol on my left hand side and water on my right hand side. Still there are some petrols left in this bottle. I can do decantation continuously and I can separate them together, separate these two from each other. So that the process is called decantation. So they can decantation sa. So ngazu nalay be na ya day to pick up sure 와 달리든 to pick up sure ngazu puda tansa bichula ani chu nalay yosha ba kengi dige di kal ding de na dige de pa khali che shugu wa. That is called decantation. Delaya I can separate the two. Water the sand particle need separate chitoering khali ma shobina no shebashna chud ma lembeina. So finally ngadel thamadel kharra grisena no dinalaya I can get the sand particles. So delia decantation sa. Decantation the kandechela pejushigrisana separation of two immiscible liquids or solid and liquid mixture. Did it uchre? Delaya liquid ni the mix shigitube. Petrol and water, do they mix together? No, they don't. So we can say immiscible. Immiscible liquid means some liquids that do not mix together. So petrol and water, they do not mix together. So therefore we call them as immiscible liquids. Liquid kashe mix shigmare degi mare. So the indo ngazu decantation the mix egi kadu pechigre kesi liquid ni the immiscible imbeina, then we can use decantation. Kesi ya solid the liquid ni mix shiguna, they are solid the liquid lana, the sand particle and water, if they are mixed together, we can also separate them. First we do sedimentation and then we can do decantation in order to separate the two. Ni the yenche chele ya and tangbong ngazu sedimentation. Now this thing is sedimentation, right? And after that I can do decantation. Tangin pa kali shobi na no that's what is called decantation. That makes a gichik yan chance on nesuchi kenguachik. Sedimentation, the decantation yisha nang la yang anzugi forced in the pejuchigre pena dinal zidarwa. Should a chemani the yevachi contest chebre, Koran contest chebre lana, or chemadi jigo chair yosa. Those lagruwa. That jigo chair yobting to jise dia, chikarilla rally grace, and Azupena negi, jigo kilo tukchu be, nange jigo jise dirwa. Jise the kilo tukchu sedu dina laya, nye sugu nangi, the entire matter of my body, sugu nangi ngoze chazanche. Plus, there is another force acting on my body, and that is called force of gravity. Gravity sigwa, tenshu, zamlingi, tenshu. So there ya. Daily beina ya chema ma tengwe yumzen de ma papwe yumzen di kwali ya tenshu ji yorwa zamlin sado de gi tenshu ji yo tsanga ko ma pabrwa. So daily ya force of gravity sigwa. So sedimentation the decantation ni di force gi kengi chungor ta force di nge de force of gravity yung sivre force of gravity digi kengi yung sivre thana shingi. We can even use centrifugation. This chance is the talk of centrifugation rwa oma the cream ni di khate the centrifugation method re otu se centrifugation method yung gure thana shin electromagnetic method den de yung gure magnetism method. So kandang e khode shik force of gravity di ngolen chi lekhabu do force of gravity chema di jigo che ya ma phabgire le. So I would say that in sedimentation and decantation, we are separating the substances on the basis of some forces, some external forces, like for example, right? Now, we'll talk about filtration. The filter che like do filter che de condition la gorlana pen tang azu seni tak che khang da wal chin chin ne kiran zu den filter den che yu gyure za kya yu gyure wa filtration la de condition la na separation of insoluble solid from a mixture nganzu chik dosu chen kha chik chuna la degi marwa pena that's sida. Now this solid sand particle, it's a solid and it's not mixing in water, it's not dissolving in water. Chunal dissolve chigi mindwa. So chunal dissolve chigi mavi na, and we call them as insoluble, something which does not dissolve in a solvent. Dindechilanga jugi insoluble legwa. So there sand is a very good example of insoluble solid. Chunal shurgu meza. So ngazu there ya dindechik solid chik. Dinte solid chevachik. We can do filtration. So filtration is again a method of separation of insoluble solid. Solid chunala liquid medium chignala dissolve matching ki solid chik and yewa chela ya tablam chipejo ya filtration. It's a method of separation. When do we use it? In case of insoluble solid. Case is solid insoluble ina, then we use filtration method. Sa gyarchinerwa. Ta ngege example chik di lembi na tanda ngede example chik di nang lo ya ta pena kesi ra soluble da pena ngege this is salt, right? The white thing is called salt. And if I put this in water and if I shake it properly, now this thing is a solution, salt solution. Now we don't see salt in water. We don't see them. That's because salt has been dissolved in water. So solid che chunala shurguyona and delia insoluble che shumare. Salt is a soluble solid. But sand is not soluble. Sand. So it's an insoluble solid. So case solid the insoluble in then we use filtration method. Case solid the if the solid is soluble in water, then we can't use filtration method. The filter filter paper can show that then ma tempe kapsu cha tu mare. We can't filter the solution, right? Sieving the container which is going to Tsayabe Tijusha. Pena Kangba Subikapsu, Chemada Durud in the Tsayat and the Tejaton Gure, Tanashing, Azunania, Tadik Gubuk of Tsayagore. Sieving Sena, so the Karilana, separation of solid mixture. Sieving it's the separation of solid mixture. Solid mixture that vary in sizes. Solid mixture yung sibre pena do chunju da chema de yobe na ya ji khaga sogo samna ni solid ba ini khaga sobe kap sung an sal denge chik the position ro separation solid mixture that vary in sizes by using a sieve. Mixing sieving na la we use this instrument sieve sa the position girwa sieve position be to ne ani ngan zo ge yawa che girwa 도수 chen cheba da chungani di yewa che ro chi daga na shingi ya solid mixture su inji minji dosu chen ni go ga kyagu mare pena nga zu cha cha bi kap su ya dinage charo ti ka zo khare solid redwa dinage cha di kharsa di thungya ding an jogi liquid redwa solid the liquid ni di de yena yang ching an zo sieving method ya pheju chi gi ta ine sieving method di khadu pheju chi gu kesi solid particle ki size di khal khanzam chi chembo yobi na 다 충중 쉬고요나 양 자자 배주담배 있나 자자는 마 되는주고 봐. 이 제도예요 말봐. So we have to be consider each and every aspect, be it the size of the particle, be it the nature of the mixture. 세신행 아주 solid 도수 체인 되게 즉 체중라 So basically sieving separation of solid mixture that vary in sizes, and we can do that by using a sieve. Sieve sieving evaporation nangla of course ngajo khachigre penange di nangloliya sada chuni de deyorwa 당에 예버체 뚝스 락베기 예버체 트웨스 개요 말와 당에 갈치가 I'm going to use evaporation method 녜디 뇌치나 look ang에 완 메땅기르와 메땅베이나 갈치그래 디나 추디 사부차 아니 추디 사부차 수나 가릴라 유두레 랑수로 유두르와 it changes into vapor it turns into vapor and it goes up 그러봐 안 대와들 가릴라 하디그래 뇌디기 샵델이야 살하디기르와 어둑시네 that's called evaporation. So evaporation nang lola ye khatigala it's the separation of soluble solid in a solution. Solution chik nangi. Now this is a solution. Solution nangi solid chiyor wata dinala solid dikare dissolve che chabrwa. Solid shur chabrwa. Chu nangla shur chadwa. So method evaporation it is the separation of soluble solid, and in this case the soluble solid is the salt. So how are we going to separate the soluble solid, that is the salt, from water? Evaporation method. We heat the mixture, and then water gets heated up and it starts boiling and changes into vapor. So that thing is called evaporation. Separation of soluble solid. Insoluble shume. Kesi insoluble ina chegoye medo. Evaporation chegoye medo. Kesi solid di insoluble ina pena chemado ina chunaluna shurgu mendoa. Tadinga kaga sugin lana evaporation injimi chegoye mendoa. I can use filtration method. Filtration method I can use a decantation method. So there mixture we can make use of different methods. Method damina so bishutan chogure. Method chiksam mare ni sum damina so yugure so tamka jaya yugure. Oduk sheshine sam tangi shesh kari mix chikidu di chik can go at the vacation. So these are the few methods that are involved in separation of solid and liquid. Solid and liquid ni yenje chegi method de kashechi nge kyanso ngodo chei and digane yange samtang chi. Tadene liquid the liquid ki mixture wa liquid the liquid ki mixture di tagi ngege petrol da dige chi chik tempe yi and dela ya liquid the liquid mixture ni nge kha hande petrol the water. How have I separated these two mixture, petrol and water? Ye khade separate cheso samno standa wa petrol that being lighter floats at the top and water being heavier settled at the bottom. So after that, what did I do? Slowly I tilted the bottle and removed the petrol in another container. That process is called decantation. So liquid the liquid mixture we can do decantation. Decantation so you have to understand what sedimentation is, what decantation is, what filtration, sieving, evaporation, and then in case of liquid and liquid mixture, we're dealing with decantation. I'm going to talk about solid and solid mixture. Solid the solid mixture the case is solid the solid in ani solid and solid mixture we have got what? Very easy. We've got hand picking method. We can use hand picking. If the particle or the size of the solid particles are big enough, how do you separate them? Filter so the easiest method is hand picking, physical, hand picking lady based on the size of particle. When do we use this? If the size of particles are big enough. Big. Chemboyuna. And kushudak nalani the lagbe yevachigwa or the day now dot in the European lagbe so hand picking. Very easy. Secondly, we have got threshing. Threshing na chida thresh lan dong ba do chirwa. So there the yang azu khachi go sena this tro yungurwa and di gi gandale ya duk she yungudwa. This thing is called the stalk. This thing is called the stalk. And these are the grains. You can also even call it a seed. We eat the seed part. And this thing is called the stalk. So in threshing, what are we doing is, what we are doing is we are separating these two. We are separating, what we need is grain. Separate so seed. We need to have this thing. Grain, seed. We need this thing. We don't need this stock together. So we are going to separate these two things. And manually that's a manual thing. And so threshing is separation of stalk and grain. Yana separation of grain from stalk, either by manually or by the use of machines. Threshing. And finally, we have got winnowing. Winnowing say the such tobo chigni ma kyach ne nere tagana shingi ya dine nga zogi table fan de yobe na de degi ya chig lungbu tang chene ani gan ma chala sene me do dige de ma chakchu ba chakchu buka lungbu di tambe na azu ka chigre dulaya dunyam dolaya khariyorsena dige di. These are the seeds. We need them. And these are the husk. So we are separating seeds from husk by using or by blowing a strong current of air. By blowing a strong current of air, winnowing se do separation of husk from husk husk from seed by blowing air. Right? Long shoot longo de pestango mara simbalum mevi longo de pestan azugi and dingy we are separating seed and husk. So there are the dechleya winnowing sa. So some analysis we na solid yevachegor. Ala the cushion yevache both of them are solid. Do the sundani the stock in the seeds and stock, they both are solid. Similarly, seed and husk both are solid. So we in all of them we are separating solid and solid mixture. So threshing, hand picking, winnowing are the methods involved in separation of two solid mixture. Diche. Ta diche le ya chik de kiranso. Derugi. Dichik nengarisha. Solution. Solution. Combination of two or more elements. In any ratio, in any ratio, taganang shinki solution senakare, it's a homogeneous mixture. So the tagi Toma de Langege check matter ma deshe gavukapsu check yela khadi get ma chitun so tina la kiranzo page solution sena kharela na nganzuki homogeneous mixture yungurwa ti nangachir rik solution is a homogeneous mixture. It's not a heterogeneous mixture. Homogeneous mixture se do dende chilla gorde. Can you see this thing? This is a homogeneous mixture. Dinal taking a cardlosun, sada chuni the deswa. Nye homogeneous mixture carchin sugar sena, delaya, sada chu, cheche, loga yevache, tugumudu, azumiki. And it gone shupa to chick na shinch tongudu. So the dechila homogeneous. Homogeneous na something that uniform mixture landitu. It's a uniform mixture. mixture is uniform kone shukpa to chikna shiresha tagi chudan chemani the devi na ta gangla chudu wala chematu now this is not a uniform mixture ngazu mik yewache thugudwa chukhandi chema khandi che so dinde yewa thugu yona ngazogi homogeneous mixture shugumare that thing is called heterogeneous mixture ta dehomogeneous re ani solution tiya khadechre isna homogeneous tagi chachuna lukswa dila kharshugre sikti it's a solution revela na solution re the homogeneous mixture revela na re and the homogeneous mixture kharchine sugar sena because we don't see any distinctive layer also chik khale chak tende chik khasire ngajo therim ne ke thongmundo dinangoliya chik khatsa cha gya shabadende chik khasore chakdo gya shabadende ke thongmundo wale ya chayo che gangle ya chuyo sabudende ngajo ge mixegi mi yenche che thwedende ke mendo so gone shukba to tevi na chik this is a homogeneous mixture. Mixture that has a uniform composition. Composition is uniform. And this should be uniform mixture, uniform composition. A mixture that is having a uniform composition is called homogeneous mixture. And solution is a homogeneous mixture. Right? That there solution gi dupcha. Dupcha kharinyo component. What are the two components of a solution? Pena di solution chire. Sada chugi soisha solution chire. Ta dinala dupcha zobuni tuwa. Kharidula na tadenge dinala rida. Pena ngegi example this. If I take salt solution. Salt solution nala ya dupcha ni tuwa. Dinala. Chik dupcha chik di tsare. Chik di water re. Di nirwa. Salt solution is made up of these two things. Now, salt sena. Di kharre sena. We call it as solute. Derda diha ko bachi. Water dikharre solvent. Shuku lagir tangajo. Begetu solution shuku. Shuku dilaya dupchani yungure. Dupchani dikharre lana inge thon shubina. One is called solute and the other is called solvent. Shuje da shugu cheche ni yungure dupchani. Shuku ki dupchani di shuje da shuku. Solution ki component ni di solute na solvent. Ta solute sena karire cha chuna la shurkudwa. Shurkhen di sursha. Cha shurkhen di sursha. Kari shursung seveina cha di shursunga. Shurba lana dissolve cheva. Kari dissolve chesung. What is dissolved? Lana, you would say salt is dissolved, right? Kari dissolve cheva dila solute later. Something that is dissolved is called solute. Dissolved. Something that is dissolved is called a solute. Solvent sena something that dissolves. Shurkendi. Kari shursung sena tsadi shursunga. So tsadila ya solute sa. Shurken sure. Tsadi shurken. Cheba bush gogurba. Shurken dila ya nga solvent sa. Some solvent sena those substances that dissolves a solute. Solvent dissolves solute. And it in a substance that dissolves solute. There is a solvent later. So, nijagi kodo lela ushtare. Ta tari tigashi wa. Nge kransola ya dimachik gonichini yakuchi sida. Dura chamate la nge kransola dikwalate sigma deshegagi ani deshegya de mixegi solution la yewa rikhande yume solution naliya yewa ni thol chegire dinge dura jama saturated solution cheji yewa che dinge chun dura juma diga cheyi an tarin teliya che kechushu chigya dirta ngegi thoma gashidi ma chik kharsire nga yala kha chima ngode chevi ngweze diget ma chechne diget chik thona ste an tin nane taring anjugi joshi sobudi chik puzan ibe ngweze mai bache pure substance kan la we didn't talk about pure substance. What we talked about is so chik he yebegi ngweze digetila wa puzan mai be ngweze diget kan la chike shevi pure impure substance kan and impure substance nang lo ya ani mixture la di gejet libgirwa de devachila lagirwa ani deze digeti ta ngaju yenche khandes chega mixture nang la substance mandawa ni sum den de de wa. So how do we separate them? Yenche khandes chega. So yenche chela tablam nge ngodo chevi. There are different methods involved, and we use this method on the basis of type of mixture. Mixture ki rig latta chene ani ngajo ki yenche che ki tablam mandawa den de pe de ki wa. This che ani yenche che ki tablam ngodo chevi kete solid liquid ki mixture in be na. What are the different methods involved? Starting with sedimentation, then decantation, we can use filtration, sieving, evaporation. I talked about these 5 methods. And then, if it's a liquid-liquid mixture, I've given you an example of it didn't mix together. So how do we separate them? We did decantation. That's a very easy method. Most of the mechanics they do, especially in the rainy season, when the biker find problem in challenges riding the bike due to the mixing of petrol and water. So these mechanics, they open up the fuel tank and they separate the fuel the petrol and the water. So that's a decantation. And then finally, when the mixture is solid and solid, I talked about 3 different methods, starting with this one, hand picking, the most easiest method. And hand picking is normally done when the size of solid particles are quite big enough. We use hand picking. And threshing now, specifically, it's the separation of grain from stalk. What we need are the grain, and we don't need the stalk. So we separate them. How do we do that? We do it by either threshing it manually. We use certain machines for doing it. Machine den pejo tam patonirwa. Tagana shi ani chek tamadila winnowing sedu sambala ya ngazo grain da husk ni dirwa. We're separating the grain and the husk. What are we using? What are we using to separate these 2 things? We're using a strong air current, by blowing the air. By blowing the air, we are separating these 2 things, the husk and the grain. So that's called winnowing. Separation method. And finally, we are on to solution. Solution. Solution sena karrelan tangsho tela kar gongugre. Solution di mixture chire. It's a mixture. Solution is a mixture. Mixture khande chire lana. Solution is a mixture. Mixture khande chire lana. Mixture la yevani wa heterogeneous, homogeneous. Solution is a mixture, but more precisely, it's a homogeneous mixture. It's not heterogeneous. And if we talk about homogeneous, what is a homogeneous mixture then? So homogeneous mixture is a mixture that has a uniform composition. Example salt solution, that's a homogeneous mixture. Solution is a homogeneous mixture. Solution component one of the component is called solute and the other component is called a solvent. Now take the example of a salt solution. Identify the solute used in salt solution and the solvent used. Solute is the salt. Solvent is the water. So solute sena karrelana something substance that which is dissolved. Kari shursum ele yang jo solute legirwa and sadi shuryoza sadi chuna lune cha shuru barwa chu shurwel legmarwa cha shuryoza kari shur la ngoje dile ya rwa ngobo kang shurwa dile ya nga jogita solute sigirwa diche 벽에 또 슈제체 슈규체 아니 슈제 나는 야 solvent 세디 다 뭐고 슈르케디 제바보디라 차 슈르베이나 차디 수익 슈르순 나는 아주 추나라 슈버바 안 슈르케디 추인사 추딜라 solvent 레그레 solvents나 substance that dissolve a solute 데레치 라비 and solute the solvent 냠도 튜베톤에 we get a solution 다른 독시 안 둔다 주마딜 랭아조 solution 콜에 모투인직 게셰 하디요 도시 안 터지나